Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome in. In this one, I wanted to touch on a pretty controversial topic right now, and it's Zach Wilson's performance, his debut performance yesterday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, I've gotten a bunch of messages really since that game is wrapped up. Some Jets fans really frustrated, not obviously in the outcome, but just how Zach looked for the majority of the game. Others totally impressed with how Zach Wilson looked in the game. Okay, so I wanted to really give my 2 cents on how I think Zach Wilson looked. And when we take a look at the stat line, overall wasn't extremely impressive, right? If we look at it almost from a fantasy football perspective, it doesn't jump off the page. He was 18 of 36, which equals a completion percentage of 50. He threw for 252 passing yards. He threw for a touchdown. He caught a touchdown for Braxton Berrios, but he also turned the football over twice, right? So 2 interceptions here, and you can make an argument he might have had 1 or 2 throws that could have been easily picked off if the defender just caught the football, as simple as that. So again, on paper, and by the way, not a lot of rushing yards as well, on paper, not too impressive. I think moving forward, you know, when I'm thinking about playing in Denver, when I'm thinking about playing in Buffalo, in Lambeau, in New England, in Miami, that quarterback stat line isn't going to win you a lot of games. Granted, a million offensive linemen were out. I didn't necessarily agree with a lot of the play calls. You know, I felt like Zach Wilson was dropping back from under center too much. 7-8 step dropbacks, almost being asked to climb the pocket. I think that's just I think it's a risky game to say, oh, here's your debut performance. You're coming off a lower body injury. We're playing in Pittsburgh, going up against a pretty talented defense. We have numerous injuries on the offensive line. Max Mitchell exited the game early. Let's have you drop back and not really know what's exactly going to be happening on your blind side, which, by the way, was being played by Elijah Vera Tucker, starting at left tackle, first start at tackle in his career. Overall, I think he did a pretty good job, but you know, I think that's a really risky game to play. Zach did have a lot of things working against him within the game, so we did see a lot of broken plays, a lot of incompletions, a lot of throwaways, some questionable decisions. At times he did underthrow a couple players here and there, but understanding that it wasn't the perfect climate, the perfect environment for a quarterback to have success. I mean, look at Kenny Pickett. No touchdowns on the day, 3 INTs. Oh, granted, one of them came at the end as Hail Mary, so I'm really only going to count 2. But we could even look at a guy in Mitch Trubisky. I felt like he made a couple solid throws. Overall, made some solid decisions with the football, but his performance wasn't pushing the needle forward. It wasn't getting the Steelers offense the success that they needed to win the game. So we could all agree that it wasn't perfect. There was a lot of bad football, especially early on. But here's the flip side. There was some good. There was some things that I was impressed with. Okay, number 1, the mobility. Again, coming off a lower body injury, playing with a makeshift offensive line in front of him, depth players, guys moving positions, stuff like that. In Pittsburgh, I think not only is it just a difficult place to play, going up against a difficult defense, but to just show off the mobility to extend plays. It kind of reminds you of, you know, the quarterbacks that used to run around a lot. And it kind of reminds you of Zach Wilson back at BYU, where he would just buy so much time and be able to find guys down the field. Now, granted, in this game, that wasn't always the case as far as a result. It didn't always result in a positive pickup, of yardage or a possible touchdown. But he was able to extend the play. He was able to buy time and turn a really negative play into something that's neutral, or in some cases a solid play. Okay, so mobility I was super impressed with. Number 2, he did spread the football around quite a lot. Tyler Conklin, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, Breece Hall all caught multiple passes. So when we ask the quarterback to be the point guard of the football team, this is one of the traits or one of the results that I'm looking for. Getting a ton of players involved, a ton of positions involved in the passing game, because once you start doing that, it really puts the defensive coordinator in a bind, because it's like, who do we guard? Everybody's getting open, right? We can't shut down the tight end position. We have to make sure running backs are being covered out of the flat. We have to make sure the young wide receivers that the Jets possess are being accounted for at all times, as opposed to going up against an offense with one primary target. Everybody in the building knows that the offense is kind of being forced through him. He's really the focal point. Okay, so with Zach Wilson's performance, he was able to spread the football around. Again, you got the tight ends, Conklin involved, running backs, Breece Hall, Michael Carter, and then of course, the wide receivers. Corey Davis, 5 catches on the day, led the team in catches. I was impressed with what Corey showed on Sunday. And last but not least, how did Zach Wilson look in the fourth quarter? He was frankly great. 10 of 12, 128 passing yards, 6 for 6 on the last drive of the game, or in other words, the game-winning drive. I think not only is it just good numbers, right, and the Jets walked away with a win, but it also shows leadership. Watching all these post-game pressers after the game yesterday, everybody seemed to be bought into Zach Wilson, like, hey, he's going to go win, a freaking touch, or we're going to go down the field and score a freaking touchdown, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we heard Breece Hall say it and everything like that. I think we saw the wherewithal, we saw the competitive nature, we saw the leadership from Zach Wilson, and then also a little bit of amnesia. Again, it wasn't perfect. Like, Zach made some horrible decisions in the game, but to say, you know what, the game is on the line now, none of that matters. The score is what it is. We have to punch it in. And that was the result, right? Again, the Jets win the game 24-20. I think it says a lot. You take a look at football aside, right? Put the NFL aside for a second. Let's talk about the MLB. Let's talk about the NBA. It doesn't really matter what the sport is. When you have professional athletes, or scratch that, when you have athletes in general step up in the fourth quarter, it makes you think of Kobe Bryant with the LA Lakers. The longer the game goes on, the better Kobe is going to get. If you need that shot, Kobe was going to deliver. That's the bottom line. Okay, so and we've seen this before with Wilson. It almost seems like when you get rid of the thinking, when you get rid of the intricate details, when it's just like a little backyard football, 2-minute offense, like, let's just really move, let's not really think too much, let's just play. The mobility shines, the arm strength shines, but also his decision making seems to be a lot better. And we could actually point back to BYU. I think it was a game against UCF where, scratch that, I think it might have been Coastal Carolina. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was Coastal, where the game literally came down. The overall drive from Zach Wilson was extremely impressive. It was late in the game. BYU was driving. They were trailing Coastal at the time. Long story short, gets all the way down the field, makes an incredible play. The pass catcher couldn't get in the end zone. It actually reminded me a lot of the Rams-Titans Super Bowl, where he's just 1 yard away. Same kind of deal back in that game. But really the bottom line, the point is here, it seems like when the game is on the line, Zach Wilson doesn't shrink. Okay, now again, the overall performance wasn't that pretty. The stat line wasn't that pretty. If the Jets continue to play like this moving forward, I don't think they'll win a bunch of games, because let's face it, Trubisky threw a pick. There were dropped passes all over the place. Kenny Pickett threw 3 INTs, again only counting 2. So 3 to 4 turnovers in the game. Minka Fitzpatrick dropped an interception. There were mistakes all over the place. Pittsburgh, by the way, penalized 8 times in the game as well. The Jets penalized, I believe, 6 or 7 times. So I don't think it's a recipe for success moving forward. I do think in some areas the Jets caught a break here, but I don't want to minimize Zach Wilson's fourth quarter performance at all, right? By no means. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'm anxious to see where you guys stand on this. Again, because a lot of the messages that I've been getting, it's just so on one end of the spectrum or the other. Some, fans think he played flat out amazing football. Some are extremely nervous going to play the division rival Miami Dolphins. So we'll see how it all plays out. Let me know your thoughts down below. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. And as always, go Jets.